Hey, Psych2Goers. Have you ever wondered why you're so hard on yourself? Or where those cruel inner thoughts even came from? You might not say it out loud, but the thoughts creep into your mind. Like, I'm so stupid. I don't deserve to be happy. Everything's my fault. Well, maybe it's not just a thought. Maybe it's a way to punish yourself with guilt, overwork, isolation, or constant self-blame. This is a form of what's known in psychology as emotional self-harm. And while it's invisible to the eye, its impact runs deep. It chips away at your self-worth, it distorts your sense of who you are. It becomes the background noise to every decision, every relationship, every moment of joy you talk yourself out of. Today, we're going underneath that pain to the places it began, because these patterns didn't appear out of nowhere. They were learned, and they can be unlearned too. What emotional self-harm really is. Emotional self-harm doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's hidden in small everyday habits like apologizing when you've done nothing wrong, denying your own needs to keep the peace, overachieving just to feel like you're enough, or talking to yourself in ways you'd never speak to someone else. You might not even realize it's harming you because it feels normal. But over time, emotional self-harm can lead to low self-esteem, chronic anxiety or depression, difficulty trusting others, and even a fractured sense of self. Psychologists have found that internalized self-criticism and unresolved emotional trauma are deeply linked to these long-term effects on mental health and relationships. Why? Because, often without realizing it, you're sending yourself the message, I'm not worthy, and your brain starts to believe it. So now that we understand what it looks like, let's talk about where it comes from. The childhood roots. No one is born with an inner critic, so where does it come from? For many, emotional self-harm begins in childhood, especially if you were ignored when you needed comfort, criticized more than praised, expected to be strong or grow up fast, or blamed for things that weren't your fault. Studies have shown that early emotional neglect and invalidation can deeply shape how we relate to ourselves, often leading to chronic self-blame and harsh inner dialogue in adulthood. To make sense of the chaos, your younger self may have thought, if I change myself, maybe they'll love me. If I stay quiet, maybe I'll stay safe. That self-blame becomes a shield. It gives you a false sense of control in a world that felt unsafe. But over time, it can lead to emotional suppression, hypervigilance, constantly bracing for rejection, codependency, putting others' needs above your own just to feel valuable. As a child, you absorb everything like a sponge. So if love felt conditional or safety felt fragile, your mind held onto those lessons, even if they hurt. And eventually that external judgment becomes internal. You carry it with you, often without realizing. That's where the inner critic begins. But here's the thing. It may sound like your voice, but it isn't truly yours. So let's talk about that voice that isn't yours. One of the hardest things to realize is this. That voice in your head, the one that shames you, criticizes you, tells you you're not enough, it isn't you. It's like an echo. It sounds like you, but it was shaped by the people and environments that made you feel small or unworthy. Psychologists call this internalized criticism, when you absorb the harsh messages of others and begin repeating them to yourself. Not because you're weak, but because repetition is how the brain learns. The good news is that means you can teach it something new. Until you do though, that voice doesn't stay confined to your thoughts. It spills into everything, your relationships, your choices, even how you see yourself. So let's take a closer look at how emotional self-harm can follow us into adult life. Emotional self-harm is persistent. It doesn't stay locked in your mind. It leaks into everyday life, quietly, invisibly. Maybe you struggle to accept compliments, brushing them off like they don't belong to you, or downplay your achievements even when you've worked so hard. Or chosen partners who echo the same hurtful messages you grew up with. Or feel like an imposter in rooms you've earned your place for. Your nervous system, it may even anticipate disappointment before it happens because that's what it's trained to expect, to brace, to shrink, to survive. This isn't a personality flaw. It's emotional conditioning, learned protection that no longer protects. And the good news here is that what was learned can be unlearned with awareness, safety, and self-compassion. When you've lived with emotional self-harm long enough, it can feel like the only way to exist. But you learn to survive, and now you have the chance to live differently. No one expects you to erase the past, but you can rewrite the way you respond to it with kindness, awareness, and choice. Rewriting the narrative. Healing doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It means meeting it differently. Softer this time. It's recognizing when those old patterns show up, and instead of shaming yourself, you get curious. The next time your inner critic pipes up, pause and ask, whose voice is that? Is it helping me grow or keeping me small? What would I say to a friend feeling this way? And in that pause, you're interrupting the cycle. That's you no longer reacting out of fear, but responding with care. That's you choosing kindness instead of criticism, safety instead of shame, and compassion instead of control. And slowly, with every small act of gentleness, you begin to write a new story, one that doesn't leave you behind. We don't choose emotional self-harm, but we can choose to heal. Not all at once, not in a straight line, but slowly, gently, through awareness, self-respect, and connection. It's a pattern learned, and therefore it is unlearnable. Awareness is the first step, and healing begins when you start replacing harshness with compassion. You're not broken, and you never were. You survived, and you're learning to live again with intention and compassion. If you found this video comforting or helpful, consider subscribing to join us on more healing journeys and leave a comment below. And if someone you care about might need this too, feel free to share it with them. You never know who might need to hear this today.